Booster seat.
Short. I'm astounded at how poorly chairs.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming to the Chancellor Town Hall. We're gonna let the executive team introduce themselves, say who they are, what their role is, and then we're gonna get right into a presentation. So, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Carney. I'm serving as interim chancellor.
Hi all, thanks so much for being here. My name is Mary Hoffman and I'm serving as interim provost and vice chancellor for academic affairs.
Good afternoon, I am Billy Fells and I'm the Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Management.
Hi there, I'm Tracy Dreyer and I am the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration.
Good afternoon, thanks for being here. Greg Heinzelman, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs.
Okay. Was everything I had to bring up on the projector?
Mike, are you ready with your
I am.
presentation?
Sure.
You all good?
So I was asked to give some campus highlights, which I will do, and I will share the stage with Provost Hoffman, who will give some highlights around Act 15, because I think that was a topic of some conversation and concern from students. So just some campus highlights. I'll be reading some of them. Some of them you may have already heard about. Just within the last few weeks, two of your fellow classmates were awarded Goldwater scholarships, which is a nationally competitive award for students in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. There were 5 of those awardees in the state of Wisconsin, 2 of them at UW Eau Claire and 3 of them at UW-Madison. No other school in the system, public or private, had any student receiving that award. And it is a very prestigious scholarship. That same week, one of our students was awarded a Rawlings Scholarship, which is a similarly prestigious award for students who are exploring disciplines primarily in environmental science. And that is actually more dollars to the student than the Goldwater Scholarship, and for a longer period of time. I think the Goldwater Scholarship is tuition, funds for tuition for 1 year. The Rawlings Scholarship is for 2 years and a little bit more money. So 2 very prestigious awards offered to 3 of our students. And then to top it off, one of our students, a first-year student, was awarded a Fulbright Summer Institute Award, which I don't believe we've ever had anyone apply for it, or much less win it. But that provides support for the student to study abroad this summer in the UK, and I believe she'll be going to Northern Ireland to study over the summertime. So 3 really prestigious awards, 3 categories, and our students and your classmates have been awarded those. Again, this year, we were recognized as a top 10 university in the nation for veteran students by Victory Media. That's a designation that we've held as a military-friendly campus for many, many years. We've been in the top 10 for the last couple of years, so it's a designation that we really value, especially as we serve more and more military veterans and their dependents. First Destination Report, which is a survey that goes out to graduates and lets them tell us what they're going to be doing after they graduate, at the year after they graduate. And we gather this information every year. Of those who responded, the average full-time salary for graduates is up over $5,000 over last year. It's almost $60,000 per year. So you can look forward to that when you leave here. And 98% of students are graduating either with a full-time job, or already have a full-time job, or are continuing their education in some way, shape, or form. So 98% of those students who graduated already have a job or are continuing their education. 31% of the class of the students who graduated last year stayed in the Chippewa Valley. And I don't know exactly, Billy, do you know how that's defined? Chippewa Valley, is it?
No.
Okay. But it's basically, I mean, you're living right now in the Chippewa Valley, but 31% of our students stay in the Chippewa Valley, and 61% of our students stay in the state of Wisconsin, which is very important to our state. talent development, workforce development. So many of you are choosing to stay in Eau Claire, and I think it's because Eau Claire is kind of a cool place to be. It's a cool place to go to school, and hopefully it's a cool place to start your career. Science building, if you live on Upper Campus, you walk past it every single day. As the construction goes up, it is nearing completion, and we can say that it will be ready for occupancy in the fall of 2027. It should be finished for people to start moving in about this time next year. And then the move-in, which will be an undertaking that I can't even imagine the logistics of doing that, because much of what is currently in Phillips Hall that is movable and worth moving will be moved from Phillips Hall to the new science building next summer. It's on budget. Actually, it'll come in, I think, a little bit under budget. There is a contingency built into all of these state projects that is intended to account for unexpected things. And to be honest, there have not been that many unexpected things that have popped up during the construction. That means that there could be money left over to buy additional equipment that they were not already planning to purchase. That would perhaps replace some things that you could move it from Phillips, but actually it might be better just to buy it new. So that is something that they can do and think about over the next several months. This will be a state-of-the-art facility. We look forward to being able to actually showcase it in person to people. You may have seen pictures of it, what it looks like, but when you walk in that front door, it will be science on display. And as you walk up and down the hallways, it will be science on display. If you've been in Phillips Hall and you are walking past one of the labs, you kind of have to work hard to see exactly what is going on in those rooms. You have to look through this narrow slit in the doorway if it's closed. In the new building, everything will be glass, and you'll be able to walk past and see what's going on in the computer science lab, in the biology lab, in the chemistry lab. So it'll be intended for people to be actually able to see what goes on in a science teaching environment. Zorn Arena, as you know, is gone, and there's a space there. It is not green right now. It's kind of brown, but that will be redeveloped into a green space. And that is happening now. You've probably seen the fencing going up now. There will be a slight adjustment to the parking that is behind this hall that goes into that space. Not a huge increase in parking, but some kind of replicate what it used to be like when Zorn was here. But then all of that, what was now brown space, will be repurposed as green space for the foreseeable future, until we have a new campus master plan that thinks about how we would use that footprint for perhaps another academic building. There are no solid plans for what would actually go in that space, but it will just be green space, lawn, places for people to hang out, play ultimate frisbee, whatever you want to do on that space. Not except pickleball, right? We can't play pickleball there because we can't put an actual court there, but it'll just be there for people to use as you would any open green space. Strategic plan. We call it the 2020 strategic vision. This was a plan that is now in its second year of implementation. I want to give you a little bit of an update, and then Provost Hoffman can fill in some of the blanks that I may leave out that are important. It was a plan that was developed over 6 months of a collaboration between the Chancellor, the academic units. There were student voices at the table when this strategic vision was implemented or developed. The goal was to make UW-Eau Claire a more distinctive campus for student recruitment, for student opportunities, for student engagement, and for student outcomes in terms of what they would walk away from with UW-Eau Claire as they walked away with their degree. There are 3 pillars to the strategic vision. One is around academic excellence and belonging. The second is around becoming a national leader in healthcare education. And the third is providing more doorways to UW-Eau Claire. So it's one campus, but multiple doorways. Now, spend a little bit of time on each of those pillars. The academic excellence and belonging, there are several pieces to it. One piece is developing a first-year experience for first-year students to get them, one, engaged with their curriculum, engaged with their peers, and engaged with the Eau Claire community. The original plan before GE, and I'll turn it over to Provost Hoffman to talk about GE, was that it would be a year-long experience. And it would bear LE credit. Well, the GE change, that's a good word, has made us have to rethink what that first year experience would look like, but it was intended to be a first year, and that's how it's being trialed this year. There were 100 and how many students? Do you remember? Over 100 students who were in a first year experience class that they got to select based on the title of the class, and then students had the option of continuing into this second term to do a collaborative research project that was somehow affiliated with that first year experience class. So that's one way that that pillar was designed to hopefully better engage our students, not only with their campus, but with the Eau Claire community. National leadership in healthcare education. We have strong collaborations with healthcare providers in our area, Mayo Clinic, Marshfield Clinic, Oakleaf Clinic. We have lots of collaborations with healthcare providers. So we were trying to build upon that to develop a level of distinction for pursuing a healthcare career. The first step is getting a bachelor's degree at UW-Eau Claire. So one thing that is being trialed or will be trialed this fall is actually a healthcare living learning community, which I think, based on students checking the box that, yes, I think I want to live in that, it is one of the most popular living learning community options for students who will be coming here in the fall of 2026. We have grand designs to double the number of students who graduate from UW-Eau Claire with a nursing degree. Right now, we have over 200 students coming to UW-Eau Claire, wanting to be a nurse, and only being able to say yes to about half of those students. So one of our grand goals is to increase the capacity of our nursing program. That will require some reevaluation of how we teach nursing, how we teach healthcare in general as an interprofessional field, but that's something that we have as one of the strategic 2030 vision goals. And then the last one that I'll talk about is providing multiple doorways to our campus. One of the new majors that we created about 2 years ago was called Professional Studies, which is designed for students who maybe are going down a path in their major, but find out maybe late in the game that they don't want to go that route, or perhaps they actually can't finish with that. They can finish with the major, but they actually can't practice in the field that they want, that major is designed. Professional Studies provides an opportunity for those students to still get a bachelor's degree from UW-Eau Claire. In the past, many of those students would have to leave here without getting any degree, which was of no benefit to anybody. But Professional Studies provides a way for students to take all of the credits that they've accumulated and then fulfill basically liberal education learning outcomes and then graduate from UW-Eau Claire with a 4-year degree. It's also designed for students who start at a technical college and then come to UW-Eau Claire with all of their technical college associate degree credits, and then layer on top of that general education, liberal education, and then leave here with a 4-year degree. So it's providing another opportunity, another pathway for students to get to a 4-year degree. So those are some of the pillars, and I'll when I turn it over to Provost Hoffman to talk about GE, she can fill in some of the things that I forgot about. But just one more thing, of course, you probably are all aware that next week we have 4 Chancellor candidate finalists on our campus. If you're not aware, it is happening next week. One on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday. There are 4 candidates who were identified. Their identities are known, their bios are out there on our on our Chancellor Search website. There are two candidates who are internal to the Universities of Wisconsin system. They are both provosts, currently provost. Provost Hoffman and I have been interacting with these folks for me for a year and a half, and now Provost Hoffman for almost a year. So we are well aware of these two folks. One is from Parkside and one is from Oshkosh. Very capable people. And then the two external candidates, one is from the UT system, University of Texas system, and then one is from the Penn State University system. So they'll be here on campus. I encourage you to join the forums, public forums, student, whatever forum you think you can attend to learn more about these candidates. The hope is that the next chancellor will be identified by the end of this month, so that by the time that you all leave here for summer, that you would know who the next chancellor will be, and then that transition would occur over the summertime. So with that, I don't think I have anything else to add, and I'll let Provost Hoffman talk about general education and active.
Yes, thank you, Chancellor Carney. I was asked to talk a little bit about Act 15, and really Act 15 involved three things at UW-Eau Claire, three things that required action. And one of those I think is most significant to students. So I'll name the first two, and then we'll spend time talking about general education. And if you have questions about the other two, I can answer those. One element was faculty workload. We were asked to review faculty workload to ensure that all faculty were teaching the equivalent of 12 credits per semester, faculty and instructional academic staff. That is not substantially different than what we already do on campus. That is how most of what we do works. What we do have to do is work on reporting that clearly to UW system. So that was one piece that really, from my perspective, doesn't have a lot of impact on students' everyday life. The second element that doesn't have a lot of impact on students' everyday life were some high demand, some salary increases for faculty in high demand fields. So those fields were determined by the legislature or by UW system, and then we work to do the work to examine the data on campus and to make those increases. And that work has also already been completed. The thing that I think impacts students and maybe creates the most questions for students is a shift to a common set of general education requirements for UW system. They call it CGER, don't love the name, Core General Education Requirements. This will replace the liberal education requirements that we currently use at UW-Eau Claire. And before I give you the details, I want to say that any student who is already here will stay in the liberal education system unless it is to your advantage to switch to the general education system. So don't sit there and think, oh my gosh, I have to start all over in this new system. You do not. There may be a few students for whom it might be more efficient to do CGER, and your advisor in the ARCC can help you make that determination. So I do want to give you a little bit of the details of what it looks like. So the goal of this was to make transfer more efficient across UW system schools for students, right? So if you wanted to start at UW Stout and transfer to UW-Eau Claire, it was kind of a complex process. And so the idea was that if we all have the same general education requirements, basically the same, then it'll be easy to transfer. If you finish a category at Stout, it's finished at Eau Claire, it's finished at Madison, it's finished at Milwaukee. So that is the goal of this process. So to comply with this directive from Universities of Wisconsin system, UW-Eau Claire changed from our LE, liberal education system, that has 11 outcomes and where courses meet multiple outcomes and where 36 credits are required. So 11 outcomes, courses meet multiple outcomes, and 36 required credits. So we moved into a new system, or we will in the fall, students starting in the fall, will move into a new system that involves 6 categories instead of 11 outcomes, 6 categories, no double counting classes, but still 36 required credits. And so many of you probably know, or if you looked at your degree audit, you could remember, because sometimes you can't remember all of it, that currently students take courses in, let's see if I can do it, natural science, social science, arts, humanities, communication, quantitative literacy or math, creativity, integration, global perspectives, diversity perspectives, and civic and environmental responsibility, and complete service learning or
Beautiful.
community engaged learning.
Well done.
Well, I've had 10 years to learn that part. So that is what happens now. In the new system, students will take courses in mathematics and quantitative reasoning, communication and literacy, science and wellness, including a lab science, arts and humanities, social and behavioral sciences, and civics and perspective. So most of the outcomes that we do in liberal education are somewhere in those 6 categories. Thing that's not there is community engaged learning, and we're working on how we might be able to bring that back. And the other thing that's not there is the integration, where we ask you to make those connections. I am hopeful that you will continue to work to make those connections, or that future students will work to make those connections. And I'm confident that faculty will help students to make those connections across categories. So the program will use the same courses. So what we've basically done is recategorized courses into this general education system from the liberal education system. So in June or July, when the new catalog comes out, or in Camp S, if you look at the courses, you will see, LE K2, which we now know is a social science, but then you'll also see probably CGER becomes SBS, I think, new abbreviation. So you'll see multiple outcomes on the course, but again, students who are already in LE will stay in LE unless it's to their advantage to move elsewhere. So you haven't been here as long as some of the rest of us have, because you're students, and we welcome you in, and then we say congratulations 4 years later. But faculty and staff are pretty attached to this liberal education system. There were some things about it we really, really thought were valuable. And so we had to get this done really fast this last year in terms of making the transition. The timeline was short. So a group of faculty and instructional academic staff are currently working on figuring out ways to pull in those things that we thought were most important from liberal ed and make sure that they stay in the general education system. So the University Liberal Education Committee is working on that process this spring. So that's where we are on general education, where we are in faculty workload, and where we are on those high demand salary increases. And I'm happy to answer questions about any of those things during the Q&A.
I just want to add on that we have had 2 general education systems running side by side in the past. Many years ago, we had a general education program that was different from what Provost Hoffman just described, and then we transitioned to LE, and we had students who were in GE and in LE, and we graduated people and no one knew the difference. So we're just redoing that again, except now we're going from LE back to something that we call GE. But we will have 2 systems of general education, liberal education running side by side. That all depends on what year you're in and what catalog you came in under, but there's no need for you to worry about the other one if you are currently in the LE system. So hopefully that puts a little bit of maybe some anxiety you had about switching it in your senior year, that you will not be asked to do that.
Thank you, Chancellor Carney and Provost Hoffman. Aiden here has some questions that are compiled from some students we talked with. If you're in the audience and you have questions of your own, write them down on the little post-it note I've given you, raise it up, and I'll come grab them. But Aiden is going to start us off.
Yeah, so you start off a bit by talking about Vision 2030. I wanted to, so yeah, you said we're in the 2nd year of that right now, right? Or
Yes. Yeah.
okay, so
Of the plan, yes.
yes. So what is there left to complete in Vision 2030 that might affect or interest students?
Well, it's, a lot of it is, we're in the initial stage of, for example, becoming known as a healthcare education campus and a destination campus for students wanting to come here and pursue a healthcare career. We're trialing some things, we're rolling out some things now, and then it's just a matter of continuing to do that. So there will be some new things, and perhaps Provost Hoffman can talk about that, but much of it is, okay, we have a plan and now we just have to implement it, see how it goes. If things need to be tweaked, then we'll tweak and then continue for the next year.
Okay, and how might students be able to get involved in the implementation of Vision 2030?
I think there's a few spots where students might be involved, and I don't know if you want to talk about some of those, Fred.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things that we will be launching this fall is a program we're calling Tradition Keepers. And when we look at the data related to retention and a sense of belonging on campus, and we look at what the students tell us in counseling, student health, and the residence halls and the programming that we do, we've been very fortunate this year that we've seen about a 300% increase in participation in structured programs that we offer students on campus. It's a pretty phenomenal shift back to kind of pre-COVID levels of engagement for students. But we also, recognize that we need students to find their community, and they need to find that connection on campus in order to retain them as a student. The academics is a big part of that, but the other part of that is your social development. And part of what we're trying to do with Tradition Keepers is introduce some traditional events and activities that happen on campus every year, some that are sponsored by student clubs and organizations, some that are sponsored by the university. And we've kind of gamified a way in which students will be introduced to the program and will be able to kind of gain points towards items that they'll be able to claim throughout their academic career on campus. And they're kind of preset traditions. There's about 100 of them on the list right now. We're going to use the Blue Gold Connect app as a way to kind of mobilize that and introduce it to students. And ultimately, it ends up with a special medallion that you wear at commencement because you became a tradition keeper at the institution and engaged in a series of events and activities. Going back to kind of that liberal education, the liberal education from the standpoint of doing a variety of different things on campus or creating your own tradition as a student group or an entity on campus. It's been used at other campuses. We've had students involved in that process and creating that since day one, since we introduced them to kind of concept and the idea. One of the other things that we're doing in the fall is we're doing a paint to pavement project. So some section of campus in the fall, we haven't quite determined where exactly that's going to be with all the construction. We're limited on what options we have, but we're gonna do a mural that represents some aspect of UW Eau Claire life. And we're asking a group of students right now. We've got a department that's committed to supporting that. We have a group of students that are going to come back early in the fall, and you're going to see a new mural on campus in a particular location that will build from year to year. And hopefully, in 10 years, we'll have 10 different murals across campus on pavement intersections, on the hill, on those types of areas on campus that you frequent as a student and find some identity and some significance of leaving kind of a mark that you've been here. That's a visible mark. So those are some of the traditions that we've talked about kind of introducing that we've examined from other campuses that have really helped students find some connection, maybe in ways that they haven't before in the institution.
Okay, and so a question from the audience. Is there a section of Vision 2030 that addresses accessibility for students on campus?
I don't know that there's a specific mention of it, but so I don't think so. But that doesn't mean that we're not paying attention to accessibility issues on our campus. I don't know if there's a specific point or a specific issue that the question is addressing?
So this question is specifically addressing accessibilities for students like coming from the dorms. Most students are at this point living on upper campus since the dorms on lower campus were torn down. So they were wondering if there's any plan on getting more accessible housing for students.
Well, I don't think there is a plan to build a new dormitory on lower campus. I think the plan is that there is a dormitory on Water Street that is technically the lower level of campus. I realize that there are navigation issues across Water Street, and I just want to commend the student who raised that issue and got the special sign and warning signal at, I think it's Second and Water, to provide safe crossing of Water Street from Aspenson Mogensen. So I don't think there is a plan to build new dormitories on lower campus, but we continue to have services to provide student transportation up and down the hill. I don't know, Vice Chancellor Fells would like to speak about that.
I think just in addition to what Chancellor Carney has been talking about, one of the new responsibilities that the incoming chancellor will have will be to look at creating a new campus master plan that starts kind of pretty soon after they get on campus. So that campus physical master plan will look at what are all of the needs from the campus from a building perspective. When the science building is complete, we are working with the city of Eau Claire to really have that city bus that picks you up in front of Centennial and takes you the roundabout way to get to upper campus. Our goal is to actually have a city bus that will be at Davies, taking people right up the hill to upper campus. And so that bus will literally be doing nonstop up and down the hill. So hopefully that will help with some of the accessibility issues as well, because those buses will be equipped to support students with those physical needs.
If we might, Chancellor Carney talk about the Vicky Lord Larson elevator project. Work being done on elevators in Hibbert Hall this summer. There's a long list of facility challenges that we face that come up throughout the year in reference to our aging facilities on campus, and elevators are a part of that. They have a life cycle.
Yep.
And we have a number of projects on the horizon that will be playing out here over the course of the next year related to that.
Yes, so this summer, both elevators in Hibbert Hall will be replaced. Right now, they've been hit or miss for the last several years. Sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down. But this summer, both of them will be replaced with new, sort of state-of-the-art, modern technology elevators to help students and faculty who have to traverse the floors in Hibbert Hall. The same will happen in Schneider Hall. I think there's one elevator that will be replaced this summer so that we don't run the risk of having an elevator that's 30, 40, 50 years old and then running out and having it fail and not being able to find actually replacement parts for it because it is so old. And then in Vicky Lord Larson, for those students who have accessibility issues and need to go to the advising center, which most students will, right now they have to go into Schofield Hall, use the elevator in Schofield, go up to the second floor of Schofield, and then traverse their way up the ramp up into Vicky Lord Larson so that they can go to the advising center. So there is a plan to actually build an elevator that is for passenger use in Vicky Lord Larson. I don't know the exact time frame. Tracy, Vice Chancellor Breyer, you might know, but there is a plan and there's funding to actually build a new elevator in Vicky Lord Larson that would allow students to come right off the the Garfield Avenue entrance to Vicky Lord, go into the elevator and then go directly up to the second floor.
And just to piggyback off that too, all of our facilities projects, even once they're approved and funded, we're still subject to all of the procurement rules for the state, and then they're handled by Department of Administration. So we're on their timeline.
Yep.
So as we were talking about Hibbert elevators happening this summer, they were supposed to happen last summer, but DOA wasn't ready yet. So even when you hear that something's approved, the timeline that's set forth can change based on contractor availability, parts availability, and the Department of DFD, which is in DOA, Department of Administration, when they have availability to run the projects.
So we've crossed the first hurdle, which is getting money.
So is there anywhere that information regarding 2030 is accessible by students?
There is a website. I don't know exactly what the URL is, but I think if you go to the campus website and looking at my chief of staff, and that if you just type in Vision 2030, you will come to the page that outlines in much more detail than I was able to provide what the pillars are and what the goals of the pillars are.
And as part of Vision 2030, you mentioned wanting to double the amount of people graduating
Yeah.
from the nursing program.
Yeah.
How do you plan on increasing that graduation rate without compromising academic rigor?
Well, there's a couple of ways. One is part of it requires us furthering our collaborations with healthcare providers in the region. We already have strong collaborations with Mayo Clinic. We have strong collaborations with Marshville Clinic, soon to be Sanford Health. We have collaborations with other healthcare providers in the region. It's creating more of those because at some point, nurses in training have to go out into an environment where they're actually dealing with real live humans and interacting with real live humans in a clinical setting. You cannot graduate with a nursing degree anywhere without having that as part of your clinical experience. Having said that, historically, we have relied on that model for most of our clinical nursing education. It turns out you can do a significant portion of clinical nursing in a simulated environment, which means you're dealing with a mannequin, for example, that's not human, but is behaving in many cases like a human. It breathes, it moans, it groans, it mumbles, but you can do a certain portion of it. I think it's up to about 50% of your clinical experience in a nursing environment can be done in a simulated environment. We are taking more advantage of that. Our new science building will have about 10,000 square feet, I believe, of space in the science building specifically dedicated to nursing simulation. And it's of that, it's called a high fidelity version where the mannequin can actually breathe and talk and give birth, that students will be able to gain that practical knowledge in a simulated environment. And it actually enhances the educational experience because if you're in a clinical environment where you're dealing with real humans, well, then you can only do and practice what that human is experiencing. Whereas with a simulated environment, you can make that mannequin experience a lot of different scenarios that you could never be able to experience in a clinical setting when you're in a hospital or in a clinic, when you're just dealing with the person who's having that situation. Can't make them fake some other situation. Well, you can make the mannequin fake a lot of situations and then practice. And then if it didn't go so well, you can practice again. So it actually enhances the educational experience because of greater variety of experiences and the ability to practice over and over again with that same situation.
Then, and so ending it off for Vision 2030 or generally the vision for the university, within your vision, how do you see the university's commitment to promoting civil discourse? How do you see that evolving?
It is fundamental to what we want our students to do. It's engage in civil ways with people that don't agree with what you believe or maybe have a different view of the world than you do. We are working with the universities of Wisconsin to, maybe you can talk more about can't even think of the acronym.
I know, I'm losing, WIPs, there we go.
WIPs, yeah.
We're working to integrate the Wisconsin Institute on Public Policy, what's the S for? In any case, Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy, into our campus. So there'll be some increased opportunities for students who are interested in public policy research and public policy application. And then we also have a group of faculty who are working, and students who are working on some civil dialogue initiatives right now. And you'll hear more about that in the fall. We have student orgs that are doing that work, and faculty who are doing work on leading discussions in class on difficult topics as well. So that work is already going. While it may not be explicitly called out in Vision 2030, we are working on integrating that. It's a fundamental part of being an educated human being. I want to add one thing about the vision, if I may, that when you do a strategic plan, the challenge is figuring out how to say what you're going to do without also saying everything you're already doing. So that's an important thing to think about when you look at a strategic plan. If you go online and look at it, is that it doesn't account for all of the other things that are happening on campus that we'll continue to do, right? Yeah, it doesn't say that we're going to provide an excellent residence life experience, but we're going to do that because we're already working on doing that, even if it's not enumerated in that particular plan. So that's just a word of caution as you
Yeah, to double down on that, just because we want to stake a claim to be a national leader in healthcare education, that doesn't mean that we're jettisoning all other majors on our campus. We will still have business, we will still have music, we will still have fine arts. We will still have everything that Eau Claire currently has because we are a comprehensive university. It's just that our unique situation in the Chippewa Valley and the collaborations that we have in healthcare provides us with an opportunity to, I would say, raise the level of distinction for UW Eau Claire in that particular setting. But it doesn't mean that we are becoming solely a healthcare campus. That is not. It might seem that way, it might sound that way when you have a pillar that talks about healthcare education, but we will continue to provide learning experience for a broad array of students who want to pursue a broad array of disciplines.
Okay, so that should be it for Vision 2030. We're gonna move on to a bit about construction on campus. So there have been students who have heard that some of the older dorms, like Murray, Horn, or Sutherland, are either being torn down or refurbished in some way. Has there been conversations about that? What's that looking like?
Please.
So at this point, there is no plan to tear down any of those buildings on upper campus. Again, as we look at this next physical master plan that starts in like 2029 to like beyond, probably to 2040, that could be something in the works. But if you're thinking next year Horn is just going to disappear, no, it will still be up and running. It's always interesting when we do tours or orientation and alumni come back with their now 18-year-old and they're like, wow, the paneling looks the same when I was here. It's the same paneling. So some of those buildings, all those buildings were built in the 60s, and it costs a lot more to refurbish a building like that than it does to actually build a new building on someday. So if you're saying like, why aren't we just putting in air conditioning, modern kitchens, and other things into those buildings, the infrastructure would not allow us to do that without putting millions upon millions in it. So the housing staff, they do a lot with their budgets to make sure that the carpeting is replaced, the blinds are replaced. I think in Towers, they put in new blinds. In a couple of the other buildings, they put in new carpets. They've been putting in new doors. So yes, we would love to at some point bring in some new undergraduate buildings, but it's just something that is at the end of a long line of priorities for the universities of Wisconsin and the campus as well. But right now, all the buildings that you see on upper campus, they will be here till you graduate probably.
Okay, so now, with a lot of initiatives in our science programs, what is the construction timeline looking like for the new science?
Yep, it will be finished and ready for use in the fall of 2027. So there will be another year of construction. As I said, construction is going well, smoothly, and they anticipate having it substantially completed by about this time next year. And then that would provide us a runway of 4 or 5 months to actually move the equipment that needs to move from Phillips Hall into the new science building. So if you are still here in fall of 2027 and you will be taking a science class, that science class will be held in the new science building.
Okay, and with the new science building, what is the plan for Phillips?
The plan for Phillips is that it will be torn down. I mean, that's part of the expectation when you get a new building is that the old one comes down. There's a sort of provision that there's no net new square footage on a campus unless it's dictated by a change in curriculum. So Phillips Hall will come down, and the initial plan, yeah, turn it over to Vice Chancellor Dreyer to talk about what that footprint would look like, or what the current plan is for repurposing that footprint, at least initially.
So it's still with the design group, but the initial plan is to replace that area with, an outdoor classroom that would seat around 50 to 60 students, and have solar on the roof and being solar powered lighting. And then redo, the area, the green space around it, but keeping the bridge and everything still intact. And then expanding, the rest of it into additional parking. So it'd be lower campus, additional parking, and then the hope is to be able to build, some, like a transit station almost down there to redirect where the busing goes, so that instead of in front of Centennial and Davies, it could pull in right there, and have covered bus parking or bus seating for people riding the bus, and then it would go right up and down the hill instead of going around. So it'd be a little bit more efficient, and kind of creating that whole campus transportation hub right there where there's the additional parking. So there's about 4 different plans that the designers are looking at right now. But we've given them our feedback, and so it's very much still not finalized, but that's what we're thinking will be in that space.
And also with the, it's still with the new science building coming in, are there any plans with the nursing building or the recently acquired Sacred Heart building?
Well, the Sacred Heart building is not university property. It's not foundation property. There will be an announcement in the coming weeks about how that Sacred Heart property will be repurposed. It will not be repurposed by the university because the university, through its foundation, no longer owns that property. It's been transferred to another organization. But I really can't speak to what the future vision is for that hospital, the former hospital, other than to give you a little bit of teaser that it is going to be an incredible opportunity for UW Eau Claire and for the Eau Claire region. Nursing is TBD. Right now, in the foreseeable future, nursing will continue to be taught in the current nursing building, with the understanding that in the fall of 2027, all of their high fidelity simulation will occur in science building. Beyond that, there are no plans to build a new nursing building. Other than in our minds, we know that we have to do something, we just don't know exactly where. And we don't know exactly how long it will take to get in queue for UW system to approve the construction of a new nursing building. Did that answer the question?
Perfect.
Okay.
So there's been some concern from some staff and students about severe weather in storm areas and like storm shelters in Davies specifically. Has there been any conversation about that?
That there's not sufficient storm shelter?
Yeah. Okay.
No,
I think collectively, this is the first time we're hearing this, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
Gonna say, I can elaborate on that,
Sure,
because I've
okay.
had several students and staff come to me about it, actually. I have heard that really the only safe spaces in Davies is the 2 main floor bathrooms, and there's been concern about if severe weather were to suddenly strike, say during like lunch, that there would be a sufficient space for all the students and staff to get into those 2 restrooms on that main floor or quickly enough, depending on if they're on the 3rd or 2nd floors, because everyone says main floor, lowest level of the building when stuff like that hits. So there's been concerns about sufficient spacing to get everyone into that type of a safe space. So trying to figure out what would be the best manners to try and address that. Some people have talked about maybe getting some sort of like drop down storm window coverings for like the stairwells in the bathroom areas on upper floor or anything like that. And so that's kind of what they have been kind of bringing to me as a student senator, which is part of the reason why I felt it'd be something pretty good to bring here.
Okay.
With the amount of glass in that building, you know, that's the concern. It's a low
Yeah,
level bathroom.
because
They're
a lot of
safe
times they
yourself.
say stairwells too is a good place to go, but with the glass in the stairwells, it doesn't make that a sufficient spacing.
I mean, it's tempered strengthened glass, so it's as high level glass as you can do in that environment, but still glass.
Okay, so, yeah, moving forward with plans to hopefully increase the prevalence of some of our programs, which would coincide with an increase in the student body. Are there any plans or conversations to address student parking and potholes around campus?
Student parking and what?
Potholes.
Well, I think the student parking, we kind of addressed it when Phillips Hall does come down, there would be additional student parking, staff parking on lower campus. That was on the side of the river, so instead of being on the Water Street lot, that there would be additional spots closer to the, most of the academic building on lower campus. I don't know when that would occur. I don't actually know when the time frame would be to tear Phillips down. It would not be next summer,
It would be
Right.
1 year after.
1 year after. And then again, it does require Department of Administration to basically manage that process, so we have to get into their queue of making that work come to fruition. So it's a few years down the road before we'd have additional parking on lower campus.
From an upper campus perspective, we've actually added over 250 parking stalls on upper campus. So we have partnered with CVTC, and then we actually took over 2 parking lots from Sacred Heart. So we have actually expanded that parking perimeter on upper campus. I always like, for some reason, I oversee parking, right? As I was sitting as an undergraduate, never in my wildest dreams did I think, wow, I'm going to oversee parking at a large institution where everyone just loves that concept. So I always say we don't have a parking inventory problem, we have a parking convenience problem where people all want to seem to park right next to the building that they either live in, work in, or want to go from where they live to where they work, all and park right next to it. Presently, we have about 130 vacant parking stalls in our remote lots, which is Bollinger and the activities lot. So if there is a student that truly needed to have a car on campus, we could accommodate that because then there is that shuttle bus system that would take them to those remote lots. But from an upper campus perspective, we have really noted that students want to have cars when they're living in the residence halls, and we've tried to address that as best as we can.
Okay, and now finally for construction around campus, how have finances factored into the construction that's gone on?
So that question is, I'm not sure exactly what is being asked there. So for example, the science building, all of that funding comes from the state of Wisconsin, taxpayers of the state. Plus, Mayo Clinic provided about $14 million towards the $270 million. So there are no student fees that go into that. It's all what's called general purpose revenue. That is tax collections from the state residents that are going in to fund that building project. So that's, I don't know if that's what's being asked for that question, or is it?
Yeah, so in terms of building priorities, would that be entirely determined by those by that general purpose revenue?
Which building priority?
Whatever the university decides to prioritize.
A new academic space it would be based on having the state of Wisconsin say, yes, we want to invest state tax dollars in that new space on that campus. Now, if it's a residence hall, it's a different story, and it's not, Vice Chancellor Fells and Greg Heinzelman talked to that. But if it is an academic space, then that money comes from state tax dollars, and then it's the state of Wisconsin, the legislature in the state of Wisconsin determines how that money gets distributed.
And I can expand on that a little bit. For any project, whether it's academic or non-academic, it has to be approved. And so every campus will put forward their 6-year plan on a regular basis, and it continues to be updated. And then the system office will prioritize everything they receive from all the campuses to bring forward for approval, and then it's just what is approved. So some years your campus might get picked for something, and other years you may not get any projects that you put forward approved. If it's an academic building, then it is funded by the state. Going forward, all new building projects, now it's a new rule that went into effect after we got the science building, that 10% of the cost needs to be funded by gifts. And so you're going to see a lot less new construction at all the campuses because foundations will have to raise 10% of the cost of those new buildings. So it'll probably be a lot more remodeling coming from all campuses in the future because of that new restriction. If we want to do a new dorm, even though that's 100% our own campus funding, it still has to be approved. So we have to get approval to use our own money, which can be frustrating. It can take years. So it's a long process, and it's different depending on the type of funding.
Okay. Now, moving forward onto Act 15. So starting off, how have academic advisors and professors been led through the changes to this new GE system?
Faculty has been involved in the crosswalking, as we call it, of courses. So determining how a course that might have 2 outcomes moves to a new category where it's only going to be in one category. Vice Chancellor Fells can maybe talk a little bit more about the advising piece of that.
Yep, so advisors are very attuned to what they need to be aware of, what are the new requirements around GE while maintaining what do students need to do to graduate with LE. As Dr. Kearney was talking, the Advising, Retention, and Career Center was built the year that we switched from GE to LE. So all of those advisors had to be trained on 2 graduation paths on top of whatever their major was going to be. And so it'll be a very similar activity. I would say if you are a new student this fall, like if you're a new freshman this year, your academic advisor in your next academic appointment is probably going to have that conversation of you have 2 opportunities in front of you. If you stay on the LE path, which is highly recommended, this is what your graduation path will look like. If you decide to consider the GE path, this is what this would look like. And it might actually be 2 more classes that you have to take in GE instead of the LE path. But they are prepared to kind of do that analysis and put that in front of all of their kind of just starting students.
Okay. And now with now that we will no longer have to get integration credits, there is some concern that the study abroad program will lose some of its appeal. Do you feel some of the same worry? How do you feel the study abroad program might be affected by this?
So I want to first point out that most of the people in this room will still need to do the I. But for new students, that is correct. There will not be the integration piece. I am hopeful that students will recognize the value of the immersion experience or the study abroad experience beyond the academic credit. Doing an immersion experience, with the funding attached to that is an incredible way to learn more about yourself, more about the culture you're visiting, which goes beyond the academic credit that would come for that. The same with a semester or a year in study abroad. So we may have to talk to students a little bit differently about some of those experiences, but I think those experiences will stand on their own as being worthy of student engagement.
Okay. Now, a question about the honors program. A lot of honors courses typically double dip in LE requirements, and that is pivotal to a lot of the courses. Now, how might these courses be affected by changing to the GE program, and how will that look for the honors program going forward?
That's a really good question, and honors has really been on top of this from the very beginning. So I would say that the courses in honors probably won't change much. They will just have a different designation in the new system. So, if you have a course, that meets S1, so communication, and it meets K4 humanities, it'll only be communication or only be humanities in the new system. because you need to get fewer things in the new system. So I don't think the course content is really going to change. The way things get counted might, and honors is really paying attention about how to make that work because it is something many honor students enjoy, those courses.
Okay. And now Act 15 is a very complicated subject between a lot of areas, between state legislature, the Board of Regents, and the individual universities. So is there anywhere that a student can go to find some of this information?
Well, there are system policies or draft system policies on all of these things. And so those could be found by searching the UW system website for workload policy or core general education requirements policy. The next catalog, so the catalog that comes out this summer, will have lots of information about CGER in it. It's just not available to the public yet because it's still being edited. And those are probably going to be the best sources on that, the system policies, and then the catalog once it's out.
Okay. Now, finally, moving on to administration in general. We are closing in on the end of our new chancellor search. How might a new chancellor affect operations at the administrative?
Excellent question. I can tell you that when the prospectus went out, which is the document that goes out to solicit interest for the new chancellor, the Vision 2030 plan was front and center in that prospectus, meaning that the expectation is that the new chancellor will come in and not dump everything out and start over from scratch and figure out what UW Eau Claire is about, that they would take what has already been done and just continue the path forward. So the expectation is that the new chancellor will come in and not start brand new things or say, well, we're actually not going to do any of that 2030 vision stuff. We're going to do something different. The expectation is that the new chancellor will take what is already in place and then just see it through to fruition. Is that fair? Okay.
Okay. Now, with the president of the UW system no longer in their position, how might this affect the chancellor search and UW Eau Claire?
It does not affect the chancellor search at all. The good news is that the special committee of regents is a committee of 5, and the system president, sounds odd, but the system president actually has no role in voting for who the next chancellor will be at UW Eau Claire. That is strictly a Board of Regent decision. Ideally, the system president would be part of that conversation, but at the end of the day, it's the regents who go into the room and then make the final call about who the next chancellor for UW Eau Claire would be. So it really doesn't need the system president to be here. Ideally, it would be great if they were, but the decision can still be made because the system president has no role in making the final decision about next chancellor for UW Eau Claire. So I've been assured by Regent Walsh, who is chairing our search committee, that there are no changes. There's no pause. There are no hiccups that they see along the way. That we're going forward with the finalists next week, and that the next chancellor will be selected shortly thereafter.
Okay. And are there any other issues that are foreseen with Jay Rothman leaving?
Well, I'm not sure. Issues in terms of how the Universities of Wisconsin system operates.
Yeah, anything that will affect the UW system or UW Eau Claire specifically.
I don't think there will be anything that affects UW Eau Claire specifically. Now, how the University of Wisconsin system operates, they will have to identify a new leader. The Board of Regents will need to appoint an interim president. Right now, they have a vice president who is stepping in to be, I think it's called executive in charge during this interim period when the board figures out who the next interim president will be. That interim president could be in that role for 6 months, it could be a year, it could be two or 3 years, but it's up to the board to decide how long they need in order to put out a call for a new system president. But I don't imagine any changes to the way UW Eau Claire functions. I don't think we will feel the impact. It's sort of the great thing about the universities of Wisconsin is that the campuses have some autonomy to operate in the way that they think is best, even though we all are part of the system. So I don't see any change in the day-to-day operations of our campus.
Okay. And then with our final question here, would it be feasible to consider the introduction of an administrative newsletter to kind of take the place of events like these?
I don't know, I kind of enjoy this, but an administrative letter, I mean, other than we have Chancellor forums, we have, I think I don't know how many we've had. Two or three a year, that's an opportunity for, information to be disseminated to campus. So you're talking specifically about how students learn about what's new or different or changing in the administration. I guess I don't know, to be honest, I don't know what students want to know. I don't want to give you a whole bunch of information that's like, I don't even care about this. This is what I care. This gives us an idea for what students care about. And then we can address those issues directly. So I'd hate to assume what students are interested in. So I guess I don't know how we would do it on a regular basis without knowing exactly what students really care about.
And well, yeah, thank you guys for all coming in. Was there any more questions from the audience?
We didn't really, oh, sorry. We didn't really address the pothole situation.
Oh, sorry.
Just cause it's very dire on
You-
upper campus.
so-
Yeah.
So if you pick, yes, we had this about 2 years ago where there was, I think it's around the curve, right?
Mhm.
Is it back?
Yeah.
They're bad.
It's
It's bad.
Really bad.
It's like as wide as a car.
It's,
So-
it's,
so I will
I
do-
recommend you take a little drive up there.
No, I
It's
do.
bad.
So, because that's where I knew where it was. I didn't know that, because again, I think with all the thawing, so about
Yeah.
2 years ago, students did some complaining. We made a call, someone made a call. It's the city that has to come in and
Mm.
it's the damn city. So it's the city that has to do it. So we can definitely reach out to the city again, but I will say when we made that call, I think within like 5 days, they were there to like fix it. So
University Drive,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
near towers or where?
That
By,
curve,
McPhee,
So
Yeah.
Benfica, okay.
the
it's,
corner lot.
it's real bad.
Yep. So we will reach out to our facilities people and have them make that magic call to city to see if we can get that. I think part of it is they're just waiting for the snow, which we don't know if it's done or not. So, but thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you.
It better be done.
Aaron, can I comment on maybe the last question that came in regarding newsletter or forums? I've sat with Student Senate now for 4 years on Monday nights, and there are times where I feel like there's a loss of using the open forum component of Student Senate for the student body to pose any concern, question, or invite an administrator or a faculty member, department chair to come and talk to the Student Senate, which is broadcasted for students to see. And there are very few students, I think, that take advantage of that opportunity. And I really do think, that's something from a collaborative standpoint of university, kind of the executive staff and leadership we look forward to. I know the provost has been in, the chancellor's been in, enrollment management has been in to talk to Senate about endeavors in each one of our structures within the institution. But there are very few students that show up and ask questions or, want to know something about the institution in that forum. And I think that's the avenue for a lot of this. It doesn't seem as engaging as it could be if it was established that way. So maybe something for Senate to look at.
Yeah. And was there any more questions from the
Question in
audience?
the back. Yeah.
Yeah, I came in a couple minutes early, so maybe this was addressed and I didn't miss it, or I did miss it. This university prides itself on being very open and accepting for the LGBTQ plus community. Yet we've seen lots of restructuring and lots of question marks, especially regarding the two flagship programs of the QFest Film Festival and Immersion Program, as well as the Fireball drag performance.